So, although you are studying politics and not history, we do need to look at Britain's political history with various topics. And with the democracy topic, we need to look at some key milestones in Britain becoming the democracy it is today. So, what we're going to look at very briefly now is how the franchise has been extended in the United Kingdom. So, all the franchise refers to is people who can vote. So when the franchise has been extended, what we mean is that laws have been passed which have allowed more people in the United Kingdom to vote. So the first act, the first milestone in extended the franchise came in 1832, and it's known as the Great Reform Act. So 1832, the Great Reform Act. So what this did was it extended the franchise to more than just a privileged few. So only males were able to vote at this point still, but it allowed some male middle class voters to be able to vote. So the second Reform Act that was passed in 1867. So 1867 we have the second Reform Act. So prior to the second Reform Act in 1867, about 1 million men could vote. Following the 1867 Reform Act, about 2 million men could vote. So the franchise was doubled. 1884, we see a third Reform Act. So this allows some working class men to vote. So following the passage of the third Reform Act in 1884, more working men were able to vote, but not all. 1918, we see the Representation of the People Act. This is the famous act in that it allowed women to vote for the first time. Importantly though, not on the same terms as men could vote. So all men above the age of 21 were able to vote following the passage of the Representation of the People Act, but there were limits on women who could vote. So women had to be married, graduate or property owning women, and they had to be above the age of 30. So there was still, I know this gets celebrated a lot, but it was still not a level playing field for men and women as far as the vote was concerned. Obviously it was a step forward, but it wasn't full equality between men and women. That full equality doesn't come until 1928, when we see a second Representation of the People Act. So what happens in 1928 is all adults, men and women above the age of 21, are able to vote. 1969, we see another Representation of the People Act, and what this does is it lowers the voting age from 21 to 18, which is what the voting age in most elections is, in general elections in England, where I suppose most of you live, is today. And then finally, in 2016, the Scottish Elections Reduction of the Voting Age Act lowered the voting age from 18 to 16. So 16 and 17-year-olds can vote in Scottish elections, but not general elections. And this basically follows on from the 2014 Scottish independence referendum, where 16 and 17-year-olds could vote. So this may be the future of what future campaigns look like in England, with campaigns for 16 and 17-year-olds to vote. Labour and the Liberal Democrats are much more supportive of those policies or of those reforms, because younger people tend to vote Liberal Democrat. Under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, younger people were much more likely to vote Labour, which, as we will see later on in the course, age is becoming one of those defining features in predicting how an individual will vote.